Hey y'all, welcome to Craftable Things. I'm Patrice, and today we are going to be making some custom dominoes. I have a client who is having a family reunion and they want all of their game boards and cards and everything customized. So that's what we're going to be doing today. We are going to be using epoxy and some resin molds to get that done. So let's get started. For today's project, these are all the materials that we'll need. We'll need our silicone molds, and these are two different domino silicone molds that I have. One I purchased from Temu, the other came from Amazon. I also have these measuring cups, so that way I can pour my epoxy inside of these equally, because of course we need our epoxy, and this is a two-part epoxy, so you'll have part A and part B. And this is a quick coat epoxy, so it takes about 4 hours for it to really get hard, and that's not a lot of time, but you do want it to cure for about 3 to 5 days. So here is the epoxy that we're going to be using. When using this epoxy, you have to work really quickly, so you want to have everything done within 25 minutes as far as mixing it, adding your color, and then also applying it to your resin molds. I'm also going to be using mica powder for coloring. This will give it a beautiful color. You do need to mix it in fairly quickly. You can't wait. And then I also have gloves. These are very important to have because you don't want that getting on your hand. Epoxy is very messy, so you don't want to get that on your hand. Underneath, I have parchment paper, and I also have a silicone mat. That's to help protect my work surface, and I don't want to get any of this stuff anywhere. I also recommend a respiratory mask just to protect yourself from any of the fumes and inhaling any of the epoxy. I also have these wooden sticks that I'm going to use to stir the epoxy. And you want to put equal parts. So I'll start with a smaller batch so you can see how that will look, but these particular cups have all of the metrics on it. So you want to have equal parts of part A and equal parts of part B. We'll start with a pretty small batch. But I mean equal parts, if you use 1 ounce or 30 ml of part A, you want to use 30 ml or 1 ounce of part B. That's what I mean by equal parts. It is best once you start to get it to your line to just sit it on a flat surface so that you will know, so that it'll level out. Okay, so that's 1 ounce. So now I'm going to add 1 ounce of the part B epoxy. And part B is a lot thicker than part A. Next, I'm going to get one of our wooden sticks, and we're just going to slowly mix this in. You want to get it even. You don't want to go too fast because you don't want to create bubbles inside of your mixture. There's already going to be some bubbles, and to get those bubbles out, you can get an alcohol spray mist, or you can get your heat gun. Your heat gun will pop those bubbles because, of course, you don't want bubbles to be seen in the final product once everything cures and settles. So that's all mixed in. Looks really good. I have a few bubbles in here, but I am definitely going to make sure I get those popped before everything cures. Now I'm going to use some of the mica powder, and their color theme is purple. So I'm going to go with this purple right here. I'm just going to use this wooden stick to get a little bit of the mica powder out. It doesn't take a lot. I'm going to drop that in, and then I'm going to mix it. And then as I mix it, I'll see, you know, if I want to add, if I want to make it a little bit darker, or if I'm happy with that color. But you do need to mix it in. If you notice, it's getting, that little bit goes a long way. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So now we're going to get ready to fill the molds. Remember, you only have 20 to 25 minutes to do all of this. So it's best to have all of your materials handy so that you don't have to look for anything, because it does dry very, very quickly. All right, so I'm just gonna pour it using our measuring cup right here. We're just gonna pour it in. Alright guys, so I do see a few bubbles here, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get my little mini heat gun and get those popped. Alcohol also works to pop the bubbles. So you need to do this fairly quickly after pouring, especially with this one. With this epoxy, you definitely want to do it pretty quickly. Okay, y'all, so I ended up making another batch of the epoxy because of course that wasn't enough. I used about 25 ounces of epoxy of the mixture so that we could get both sets of molds made. And of course I'm making sure that I pop all the bubbles because I don't want any bubbles inside of the final dominoes. Now I'm just filling up the boxes. Both of these molds come with a box set so that we can make a box for the domino set, and I'm just filling that up. You want to make sure that you fill it all the way up. You want to get those lines or those crevices or indentations, because that will help you to put your box together. Okay, so now we are just taking all the dominoes out of the molds. They've dried. It's only been about maybe 4 hours, so just know that they're not fully cured just yet. You want to give yourself enough time. So if you're selling these, you want to make sure that you let them sit for at least 2 days, because when you give it to your customer, they will probably try to use them right away. But this is what they look like. I think they look amazing. I love how they came out. And you want to make sure that you fill up those molds, because if not, you may have some sharp edges on the back. And if you do have sharp edges on the back, you want to just make sure you go ahead and sand that down. Okay, you just want to make sure you sand those edges down. But for the most part, our dominoes look great. And now we're headed to our printer. I printed out the labels for the dominoes, or the logos for the dominoes, using my Leonardo software, which is the software for the Siser Romeo. And I'm printing it out on my Epson EcoTank 15,000. Once it's done here, I'm just going to put that into our Siser Romeo, and it's going to do the print and cut around the design so that I can place these on top of our dominoes. Alright guys, so for the next part, we are going to be filling in the circles on the dominoes with a little bit of paint, just so that they can stand out a lot more than what they stand out. I'm using some Art Minds chalk paint. I'm also going to be applying the sticker that we're cutting to the back of the dominoes, and I will be using my UV resin just to seal it. Now that is optional, but I do want to go ahead and give it a nice seal so that that sticker cannot be peeled off or picked off or fall off. Okay, so that's what we're about to do now. I'm just going to start by placing paint inside of our holes. So I'm just going to take this here And I'm just going to dab in the center. And I will clean the outside with an alcohol wipe. For this part, I'm using a skinny brush driver just to get into the holes inside of the dominoes, and this usually works really well for me. However, you will get some of that ink on the outside of the holes, and so I find that it's best to just wipe it off right away instead of letting it dry. Now, you could use water, alcohol. You don't want to use too much alcohol or soak this in alcohol because it will dissolve the epoxy, okay? All right, so the next thing we're going to do is get our stickers that we just cut. I am then going to place the sticker on the back. And so we're just going to flip it over. I'm going to turn it just like this and flush this up here to the top. And we have our sticker on the back. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to coat this with a little bit of the UV resin to seal that in. Okay, so we're going to seal it. And then we're going to get a little bit of UV resin. And we are simply just going to put a little bit on, and I'm actually going to use my finger to just brush it in. So we're just going to get a drop. That's more than enough. And when you're using your UV resin, you want to make sure that you don't have it anywhere near any sunlight. I'm just sealing it in a little more. There we go. And I'm just sealing it in just like that. Okay, now that's all done. And now after that, we're going to get our UV lamp and put it on top, just like this. And I'm just going to move this UV out of the way because it's very close to the light, and that light will harden your resin. So I cured each of the dominoes that I placed under the UV light for about 180 seconds. You just want to make sure you feel it to make sure that it has hardened and that it's cured. And if it still feels a little bit wet or sticky, you want to go ahead and cure it a little bit more. So I would recommend just doing a whole bunch at one time. Here I'm only showing 2, but I would recommend doing a whole bunch at one time. So now these are done and they're cured on the top. You may want to, if it's not as smooth as you want it to be, you may want to just sand it down a little bit and then apply another final coat of the UV resin on top just to go ahead and cure it. The next thing I'm going to do is get ready to put our box together, which I started the box before recording and I'm so sorry about that. However, all of the pieces to the box, it's been over 4 hours. Those are cured enough for me to put them together, and so I'm using the UV resin to kind of stick everything together and glue everything together with the UV resin and the UV lamp. Okay, and so this box is fairly simple to do. You just want to make sure that you don't get any of that UV resin into any of the grooves of the box, because that's where the top and the bottom part of the box will slide. Right now I'm just putting together the ends and also the sides of the box, and I'm doing this, as you guys see, by using the UV resin and the UV lamp to get this done. Okay, and it is nice and hard, everything is stuck together, and I'm just going to continue putting it together. All right, guys, so we are all done making our domino set, and this is the box all together, and here are our dominoes, and everything came out really, really good. I love how everything came out. You just got to make sure you clean up that paint if you're going to paint. I also like to put a little bit of epoxy or UV resin on that coat, on that back, just to give it another coat where the dots are. And I'm ready to get these domino sets to their home. So if you enjoyed this video, please click the thumbs up. Also, make sure to hit the subscribe button if you are not a subscriber of this channel. But thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, y'all.